On today's episode of the DeRaud-Messinger Show, we're previewing and predicting number 5 Texas versus number 25 Vanderbilt. Longhorns fans, don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, check us out at HornSports.com for all the latest in Texas news. Now, Dylan, we got some new info because I know a lot of people aren't familiar with the Vanderbilt, story and where they're at. So let me break down this game. The game's Saturday, 3:15 p.m. Central Time at FirstBank Stadium in Nashville, Tennessee, televised on the SEC network. That's new. I know we've had one game, but Dylan, we're still getting used to it. No longer Longhorn Network.
Yeah.
Texas is favored by 18.5 points. Now, Dylan, take us into that Vanderbilt defense.
Well, Devon, after that loss to Georgia, I think Texas has rescinded their application to be a part of Georgia. Better yet, their membership within the SEC.
Okay, there you go. I was like,
right?
wow,
I think that
Texas has been a part of Georgia. Okay. Peak.
Geography. I failed that class. I failed it.
Continue on.
Yeah, talking about things that stay put. This Vanderbilt defense, led by defensive coordinator Nick Howell. He's been on staff, Devon, since 2022. Texas has not been a part of Georgia since 2022. That I can confirm. He also coached the safeties. I'm mentioning him because they have made some improvements this season. They've allowed 22.1 points per game, 50th in the country. They're allowing 215.1 pass yards per game, 68th in the country. They're also 37th in the country when it comes to rush yards per game. In total offense allowed, they're 39th in the country. Right. So their middle of the pack defense, obviously not the worst defense that Texas is going to face, but not up to the same level or standard that Georgia has played with. So maybe a sigh of relief for Texas fans. No, Michael Williams is on this team, Devin. So
Oof.
the nightmares that you've been having, maybe they start to settle after that.
I don't think it's only me,
week.
Dylan. I think that had the quarterback room shook, I'm sure, for the last couple of days in that O-line group. But yes, continue on, William.
Yeah. But on the other side too, or sticking with the defense, but in terms of the turnovers, Texas had plentiful amount last game against Georgia. Vanderbilt only has 1.1 turnovers per game. They've got 2 pick sixes though. One against Alabama, obviously in their big upset win that's put Vanderbilt on the map in terms of this year and how they look when it comes to just a contender in college football. So that's something to watch out for, but they have not been a team that's been consistently taking the ball away. And I will get to the impact players. They're led by offensive linebacker, only a sophomore. Get ready for this guy, Brian Longwell, 45 total tackles. He leads the team. He's also got 5.5 tackles for loss and 1.5 sacks with an interception and a pass deflection. So he's going to be the guy.
Outside linebacker?
Outside linebacker.
Okay. He's losing his marbles. Continue.
I said outside linebacker. We're going to rewind the tape after this. I'm being gaslit into not knowing what I'm saying. Another linebacker / safety, Devin. He plays the star position. You've got TCU transfer Randon Fontenette. He's got 36 total tackles on the season, 2 tackles for losses and a sack. And he had the interception against Alabama. So he's a guy to watch out for, especially for Ewers. He's going to be somebody that you'll see keyed up to maybe rush the passer, right? But then drop back and cover the zone, right? So he's somebody that Ewers is going to have to look off pretty repeatedly when trying to get it to his targets in the receiving room. And then you've got Langston Patterson, a middle linebacker, 36 total tackles on the season. And you got Nick Rinaldi, linebacker as well, but he leads the team with 3 sacks, 1 sack in each of his past 3 games. So he's been somebody to highlight in this matchup just with how he's been able to play, again, over the past 3 games. You're going to see him coming off the edge, lined up in the front 7, but obviously where the linebackers are, right? So these are some guys to watch out for. The bread and butter of their defense is going to be in their front 7, but specifically, again, within their linebacking group.
Dylan, on to the offense. The guy that's probably taken a good amount of the college football world by storm, the quarterback, Diego Pavia, who followed his ex-coach at New Mexico State, who's now a consultant, Dylan, for Vanderbilt
Mm-hmm.
and Clark
Mm-hmm.
Lee's squad. He's been really a two-way player and not offense defense, so don't get any ideas, but in terms of throwing the football and rushing the football, nearly passing for 1,400 yards this year, 9 yards short of that, but the touchdown interception ratio of 11 to 1 is quite impressive for Vanderbilt. And then he also adds an additional 470 yards on the ground with 3 touchdowns. So for the Longhorns, Dylan, you're probably going to want a spy on him to some level. And if you're the Longhorns, Dylan, you have a guy that is quite well cut out to be that spy, and that is our cage dog, Anthony Hill Jr., who I'm telling you has not been fed for a week and has just been
Mm-hmm.
talked about Pavia the whole week. So he's ready to jump. But for the
I
Longhorns,
will say on Pavia,
yeah,
with just how he's talked about in the media, he's like the reverse Johnny Manziel. The way he plays, the confidence that he holds himself, but he's like what, 24, 25, whereas Manziel was a redshirt freshman jumping onto the scene.
yeah, I'd guess about 20, Dylan, quite young at the time. And yeah, Pavia has had some years under his belt. And Dylan,
Grizzled.
kind of just funny to mention here, the leading receiver for the Commodores. This is a major throwback for us covering some high school
Mm,
football. It's Eli Stowers, the former Texas A&M recruit at quarterback who moved to tight end under Jimbo, then went on to New Mexico State. So you're catching the drift here and what I'm saying, New Mexico State. And now he's at Vanderbilt doing leading the team in receiving yards with 463, an additional 2 touchdowns as well through the air.
yeah.
I mean, wow, what a if you guys don't know, not only an A&M recruit, but a star at Denton Geyer as a quarterback. 6'4", he's made the transition to tight end. It's taken some time, but now it's under his belt yet again, and he's been the offense through the air. They also have 5'11" sophomore wide receiver Junior Sherrill. I'm not 100% if I got that name right, but if it's spelled like it sounds, then
Fine.
it's great. And 6'2" senior wide receiver Quincy Skinner. Both of those guys have combined for a little bit over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. So Stowers himself has had more than those two combined, and they are the second and third leading receiver on the team. So that tells you anything. Watch out for Stowers in this one, and Pavia yet again on the ground. And then lastly, I just got to bring it back down memory lane once more. You know me. At running back, you have sophomore Cedric Alexander Dillon, the pride, ready for it, of Austin LBJ. That's right, same school as
Mm.
Andrew Makuba that he attended in high
I
school.
thought Makuba was the pride of Austin LBJ.
We can we have two prides?
We just throw that out for everybody.
I'm not
I
limiting
don't.
it.
You can have. I think
380
it's one
yards
pride.
rushing for Alexander this year with 5 touchdowns before Dylan hijacks this conversation. I won't allow it. The Commodore O-line, Dylan,
Just asking the questions.
53rd in the country. I don't even hear you. 53rd in the country in sacks allowed per game with 1.57. So that's pretty solid. It's a little above middle in the road, Dylan, middle of the road. Then offensively, the run is ranked 63rd for them, 162 yards per game, and the pass is ranked 94th in the country with just over 200 yards, sitting at 201. So overall, it has been a surprise team, especially if you guys have followed Vanderbilt in years past, where they're always been the laughing stock. Now this year, Dylan, of course, they beat Bama. They also beat Kentucky, and a nearly win is not a nearly win, it's a loss, but nearly beat Missouri as well. So definitely not the team of old. We'll see how the Longhorns are able to hold up against the Commodores. Now we're going to start, Dylan, here with your favorite little bit, the X Factors. Are you going to
Mm.
shock me here?
Well, I wouldn't consider this a little bit, Devin, because this is a big part of this game, I feel like. And with what you're noting with Vanderbilt's offense and their defense too, like I was talking about earlier, they just feel like they're a well-balanced, consistent team. In a way of like you kind of get, you know, what you're gonna get out of Vanderbilt in the sense of how they want to play this game and what their strong areas are of this team. And that's going to be the running game with Pavia, making things happen, getting to third and twos, third and threes, third and ones, right? Or manageable fourth down situations and extending the drive and keeping the opposing team's offense on the sideline. And that's my nice little transition into my X factor, Devin. X factor in this game for Vanderbilt is going to be the time of possession. Crazy stat for you. All of their wins have been from winning the time of possession battle. And in their losses to Georgia State and Missouri, Vandy did not control the time of possession. Happened to lose the time of possession. Math formula, they lost the game. But in their win against Alabama, Devin, the one that everyone is pointing to as this is not the same Vanderbilt team of old, Vanderbilt had the ball for 42 minutes of possession to roughly Alabama's 18 minutes. I rounded up here of time of possession. That's a winning formula, especially when you're playing an offense led by Jalen Milroe and a wide receiver like Ryan Williams. If you can keep them on the sideline and not on the field, chances are you got a great crack at it to win the game if they're not seeing it in the field much. And I want to bring that up because they're able to do the same against Texas, a high-powered offense that also likes to set up play-action plays, an explosive team, right? If they're able to keep them on the sidelines, keep Ewers from catching any sort of rhythm, it's gonna be different. This is gonna be a different game than I think a lot of people would expect.
Now, Dylan, last week, I believe you got on to me about my X factor not being a person. So I just wanted to mention that you doubled down.
I do need to clarify. It wasn't because it wasn't a person. It was that turnovers are, of course, no big surprise, an X factor in any game. I just felt like it was,
But
kind of
Dylan, Georgia won the turnover battle. The game was a game of turnovers. If you are a Longhorn fan, maybe that's still a little too early, but even for Georgia fans, not a pretty game. Dylan, X factors. I'm tripling down if you're doubling down on my single down. I'm tripling. X factor, offensive confidence. Offensive confidence in this one. If you're the Longhorns against Georgia, I mean, the confidence, Dylan, had to be the opposite of through the roof. I mean, that was like a low limbo. That's a bar you literally walk over without tripping.
If there was a transfer portal in game, Texas might have lost a few players. I'm gonna be honest.
Well, Dylan, the body language was not pretty in that one. Of course, Ewers, I'm sure his confidence has taken a bit of a hit after being benched. Call it what it is. And then even Arch, I'm sure his confidence isn't great. He comes into the game and also doesn't do too hot. And then the offensive line, you've got guys that are graded as NFL draft picks and some higher than others, Dylan, and they did not look too great, particularly at the tackles. Now, I'm not saying the whole game was that way, but it seemed like most of it, or at least in the critical moments, it was that game, or that way, excuse me. So not pretty. In this one, can guys such as Kelvin Banks and Cameron Williams shake off that poor game? I think so, Dylan. There is a bit of a talent discrepancy between Texas and Vanderbilt that wasn't there against Georgia. Georgia has guys that are on par in terms of athleticism. However, Vanderbilt, Dylan, has gotten by this season on being the chippy team that no one expects to win. As you said, time of possession. That's just kind of gritty football. They've been winning games that way. X factor yet again, confidence. Can Ewers feel confident once again in the pocket? Can he get through his reads in a better fashion than he did against Georgia? And we'll see, Dylan. It's going to be a good game, but I'd expect Texas to be mad in this one. Expect the confidence to be high. So now we're moving on to the danger level. Dylan, what's your danger level?
Yeah, I mean, I've picked two games this season, Devin. Wrong in our staff polls for HornSports. So not the greatest of looks right now. I'm trying to get it together, so this could easily be something that just comes back to bite me in the butt. But I know we talk about Vanderbilt's grittiness ultimately on the offense, especially led by Pavia, and the way that they play football, trying to control the time of possession and take chances against teams that have more talent than them. However, I think when you look at this and the way that things have been trending, this felt like a good trap game for Vanderbilt. But I think Georgia kind of Uno reversed it in a way where Georgia beat Texas. I'm putting on my tinfoil
danger
hat
level.
Right
Come on.
Georgia beat Texas, and now this game has turned into a revenge game for Texas, and they're putting themselves in position. Vanderbilt is. they're not the most lucky team facing a Texas team that got ultimately humbled last week and are now going to be looking to right the ship. And sadly, Vanderbilt's on the other end of this. So I've got the danger level at 3 because, like you mentioned earlier, Georgia stacked up well when it came to skill players, talent across the board in comparison to Texas. Vanderbilt does not have the same level. And now you're going up against an offensive line that was talked all season about being number 1. They were playing like the number 1 offensive line and then got dominated in the trenches. And they're going to want to take it to them, as well as the defense, as well as Ewers after getting benched for 2 drives. He's going to want to be back in this and prove why he is the starting quarterback for Texas and what he's able to do. And against a pass rush that does not have Michael Williams, so he's going to have a lot more time to make the right reads.
Yeah, Dylan, in this one, I'm not gonna play around with my food. Danger level's at a 5. I think Texas comes into it angry, as we're discussing. They've already been the talk of the town since the Georgia game. Prior to the Georgia game, of course, the talk of the town for different reasons. Now they've just been kind of the butt of the joke, Dylan, and they're still the 5th-ranked team in the country for a reason. I think they're going to come into this one angry. But I do have a question. You're coming into it angry, but are you going to play this one smart, Dylan? Because it's one thing to just come into this game with a bunch of emotions, but you're going to have to make the smart plays. And at times, just not overthink it. Stick to your reads, stick to the easy throws when they're there. But Dylan, just the right choice is sometimes, I know it's funny to say, sometimes it's difficult to do when you've got so much passion and just anger built up. They're going to have to stay level-headed in this one. But also worth noting, Vanderbilt, not the team of old, of course. They're ranked 25 for a reason. Of course, the Bama win is huge for them. Can they do it again? Can they go to that, I don't know, summoning pot, whatever they got doing on campus that's going on? There's got to be some sort of wizardry with the just drastic change in the football landscape for them recently. I mean, Grand Ole Opry, Dylan, used to be the place that Nashville people went to celebrate some good times. It seems like now they're going to the Vanderbilt campus to just celebrate football. So there's a big shift in Nashville as well. Dylan, I'm sticking with the 5 there. Now for prediction, is this going to be ugly? It sounds like you're kind of leaning towards the Texas Revenge Fest, even though Vanderbilt did nothing to deserve that.
And again, it's not Vanderbilt. It's just that they're wrong end of the stick here. You hear it in the media. You hear it online, specifically Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, where Texas
Twitter.
going into it had not played the strongest of schedules, right? And it wasn't their fault. They didn't face the same level of talent that Georgia maybe has before their matchup against Texas, right? So there was already this belief behind Texas of what have they done all season, and then they lay a goose egg in the first half and just don't look right against Georgia. And this is one of the ones you got to make a decision as a fan or just when it comes to how you think this season is going to play out. Because for me, I just feel like this is the come back down to earth game for Texas after expectations were extremely high. It's a lot to handle, a lot going on the field in terms of the buzz in the stadium, all that stuff that we got into in our last video. So people are going to be like, well, this Texas team's flawed. They're not who we thought they were. Georgia exposed so many issues with this team. Where I think it was more of Kirby Smart just doesn't lose to teams that aren't Alabama. He just doesn't. He almost lost to Ohio State in the semifinals, but that's really like, other than that, he dominates teams or at least is able to make the right adjustments up against them. And I just think that was a big factor for Texas, but they're still a top 4 team in the country, and it's going to show in this game with the level of talent. And I think leaders in this locker room, starting with Jake Majors and Kelvin Banks on the offensive line, they're going to be generating push up front that they did not do against Georgia. Wisner's going to have a good game. Blue's going to have a good game. Stark's going to make a mental note that he needs to keep this running game going and learn from last week. And that's going to open up the offense for Ewers to look a lot better than he did, a lot more comfortable, and be able to get the ball in the hands of his receivers a lot easier. And again, this secondary, we talked about it, looked good against Georgia. They were put in some compromised positions. Pavia is not the same level of playmaker when it comes to throwing the football as Carson Beck is. And waiting in the wings of this linebacking group, we talk about it every day that we do these videos. But Anthony Hill is probably the last person you want spying on you as a quarterback, right? So, long story short, Devin, I have Texas winning this 42-24.
Okay, that's pretty close to mine. Not to give a little teaser, and that's a sharp teaser. But Dylan, just the Longhorn group, as you said, is angry. We're going to see if they can just explode on the scene here in Nashville. You talked about the time of possession battle for Vandy and how they do like to utilize that. It's going to be important for Texas to make stops on just the first 4 set of downs against Vanderbilt and not allow them to bleed not only the field but also just the time of possession. And a large part of that is on that secondary. We're going to see the health status of Andrew Makuba and whether he's able to play in this one. Of course, a big factor for that Texas secondary. Having an interception against Georgia, Jahdae Barron, of course, with 2 in that game. And Dylan, while Carson Beck, of course, started the year as the Heisman favorite and is still definitely in that upper echelon of quarterbacks, Beck did not look too great against Texas, and that's a testament, again, like you're saying, to the secondary. I believe he finished the game with 175 passing yards. Did enough, crazy enough, did enough. Still with 3 interceptions. Can the Longhorns do that again if they're battling some health problems? We'll see. And then offensively, I mean, we talked about the quarterbacks, we talked about the line, and you talked about the running back, Dylan. But just to add a point to that, if you're Trey Wisner, if you're Jadon Blue, I mean, this is a game where you have to show up, right? I mean, Sark didn't give you too many opportunities against Georgia just because of how that game got. But in this one, you're going to have to show Sark that, he should never throw the football again because running is just such an effective option for Texas. So I'm curious to see how some of those other guys do, other than the ones that, as you said earlier, have been just grilled over Twitter or X over the past week about. I think this is going to be an ugly game, Dylan, and this is a hot take because I know these never age well. But I just think, like you said, it's a bad week to be Vanderbilt with how the talk of the town has been against Texas. They haven't had too much naysaying this year, and now they have literally a nation's worth of it. I got Texas winning this one 41-17. Dylan, bring out the guitars in Nashville. It's going to be a jam sesh. If you're the Longhorns, though, you're almost lucky it's not a night game, Dylan. 3:15 p.m. That's a perfect time. You're not the morning slate, and you're not the night game. You don't want to be in Nashville when they're bringing down those goalposts. And Dylan, you also mentioned, I think, top 4 earlier. Texas sitting at number 5, maybe top 4 in your heart. But maybe after this game, a ranked victory, and someone drops out, maybe sneak back in there. Season's not over, guys. Let's calm down, okay? Still plenty of time left, but you got to win games like this. More importantly than our picks, what is your score prediction against Vanderbilt? Let us know down below. Don't forget to check us out at HornSports, and as always, have a great rest of your day.